Another Sales Hacker webinar. We got a great panel today and a great topic, and I'm super excited to dive right into this. We got Andrew Mewborn and David Krauss here to join us. I will get them to introduce themselves shortly. But before we dive into the juice of the conversation today, I want to just thank you all for being here. You know, we love doing these for you guys. We love our community and giving you the nuggets of knowledge from our panelists that you can take and put right into your day right away. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. It's going to be a great conversation and a very relevant topic to the world and what we're experiencing in this digital selling world, right? So I want to introduce our panel today. We have David Krauss from Freshworks. He's the Senior Director of CRM Product Marketing. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about today's call, so thank you.
Awesome. Me too. I'm really excited to hear what you got to say. And secondly, we have Andrew Mewborn from Outreach.io, Enterprise Growth. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. I know you've been on quite a few of these, so I'm really stoked to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, David. And thanks for those that put where they're from in the chat. Emily, Anika, Dwayne, Allie, Dennis, Mark, hello from wherever y'all are. But super excited to be here and you know, learn with y'all, share what I know. I'm putting my LinkedIn link in the comments. Let's all connect. Shoot me an invite. I'll shoot y'all an invite. Let's do that if you want to go from there. So thanks for having me, Mikey. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it too. Cool. So before we dive right in, what I typically like to do is just get a bit more of an introduction from our panelists so we can get a bit more acquainted with the audience. David, if you don't mind just giving me a bit, or giving our audience a bit more background about yourself, who you are, what you're all about, so we can get a bit more acquainted.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of my point of view, where I'm coming from, I've been in the business applications on the technology side for the last 18, 20 years, primarily on the sales and marketing side of the house. Before that, I was a banker. I sold money for a living, which was exciting. That was many moons ago. And I'll say, you know, I've carried a bag on the other side of the pond in the UK and in Europe. So if there's any folks that are being challenged with how to do that, I can share some of my experiences. I think the last 10 years, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem, kind of focusing on kind of that sales and marketing automation solution. My point of view is primarily a B2B perspective. And so, you know, I'm selling a B2B product, but a lot of my customers are selling from a B2C perspective. So I can kind of talk to both. And one thing I've noticed is how those two worlds are really colliding. So I'm kind of curious to get some engagement and just see what other folks, I hope you guys do engage. And, you know, shout out to Kristen Coffee. I see you're in Newport Beach. I live in Orange County, Southern California, just right down the street. So I'm anxious to get to know you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, David. I appreciate the rundown there and super excited to have you and learn from you today. Andrew, do you mind just giving us a bit of background about yourself, who you are, what you're all about, so we can get to know you better?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Mikey. So Andrew Mewborn, I was at Outreach.io starting about 6 years ago. So I was one of the first employees here. Still at Outreach, loving it. What have I done in Outreach? Initially, I was more on the product side, really helping on the technical side. And then I've actually worked my way over to sales. Why? Because I love it. So I've gotten to see every part of the business, let my curiosity drive me there. And why I'm here today on the digital selling side is, you know, I just think that the new part of the outbound prospecting process or the sales process is digital content, right? And so that's what I hope to talk about today. That's what I hope everyone sees. And I'm super, super stoked to get going on that and what, you know, y'all's perspective as well, and David's, and how you can utilize content really in your day-to-day.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Super excited to have you here, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this digital selling world. So great. This is awesome. I think we're ready to rock and roll and dive right into it. So again, everybody that's on the call here today, please, we are taking the fireside chat approach here today. So please, if you have any questions, drop in the Q&A. We'll loop them in and get our experts here to give their knowledge to us. So, but to start it off, I think I'll start off with the question that I want to kind of run by you guys. So selling, everything to do with selling, I think, is building that trust in that relationship, right? So in this new world that we've been in for the last couple of years in terms of digital selling and so on, where we can't actually go and meet our customers, our prospects, and talk to them and see them face to face and feel the body language and so on. What roadblocks have you seen selling in a digital world that really hinder the ability to build that trust with your clients and your prospects when selling in the digital world? Andrew, I'll start off with you there.
Yeah, so let's talk about old world and new world. So like old world, right? We were able to go on site. We were able to get in front of customers a lot easier. Yada, yada, yada. Y'all have all heard this a million different times, right? New world, we've all shifted to digital. What does that mean? That shift has really led to more competition around people's attention, right? We're in an attention economy. What that means is like what you're really battling for is attention. You can have the best product in the world, but if you can't get attention to it, then it doesn't matter, right? So going back to digital selling, right now it's a way. The people that are going to win are the people that are creating a faster flywheel, the people that are getting faster feedback on the assets they're putting out digitally, whether that be content, white papers, the whole webinars, whatever that is. So the shit that occur, okay, now we can't go on site. Well, what's the new on site? Being on your prospect's feed is being the new, on site, right? And so that feed can be LinkedIn, that feed can be Reddit, wherever your people are hanging out or your ideal customer base are hanging out. That is the new on site, right? And so, how do you get in front of them? What are ways to do that? What are tactics, right? I'm convinced that the best, way to do digital selling today and get good at digital selling in a remote first world is copywriting, right? So, I've been telling my enablement team about this and saying, hey, the best thing that you can teach your salespeople today in a digital selling world is copywriting. The techniques, the frameworks. Why? Because at the foundation, if we look at first principles of copywriting, it's all about capturing people's attention, right? And again, going back, bringing this full circle, we're in an attention economy. So that in itself, I believe, is the number one skill you can do. And I was actually going to write a post on this on why, but the biggest reason being it's something they practice every day, right? They're right. And everything starts with it. Presentations, webinars, everything, the foundation is writing. So, the negotiation classes are great. The discovery classes are great. Don't get me wrong. But how often are reps actually doing that today? The first piece of that puzzle is getting them on the phone in the first place, right? So if you were to double down on any area, right? What do they say? Pipeline cures all ills, right? So you can make mistakes down funnel over here, but if you don't have any pipeline, then you don't even have the chance to make those mistakes. So that's my spiel. Would love to hear y'all's thoughts. Drop in the comments. What do you think? Any questions you have? David, how about you? Let's hear from you.
Yeah, Andrew, I think I love that term. I wrote it down. Attention economy. I think that's good stuff. I think you nailed it there. I think I would say the attention economy resonates with me, and I would also say this element of time compression. We all are acknowledging that time kills all deals, and I feel that time has only just gotten shorter in this kind of digital first world. I think one thing I might add to that too, and that it's really the whole content and digital first engagement, is that from the selling perspective, we're now engaging our customers in middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So there's all this engagement with our brand that we're likely not aware of. And how do we capture that and make sense of it? And the expectation that I've found from the customer is that we know them. It's like, hey, I've been engaging with your brand for the last 30, 45 days. I've had 6 chat calls. How come you don't know about this? This element of not starting from scratch is kind of marquee, and I think it's intertwined with kind of how you build that relationship in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. One thing I would mention too, and Dwayne, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name here. There's a question that says, to build trust, is it still knowing their business inside and out? who they know to incorporate in the digital selling methodology. I would say yes when you get to that point. But, the first piece of digital selling that I think needs to be mastered or that I would put my, entire savings account on is initially getting people's attention on the pipeline side, right? Because nothing else matters later down the funnel. Like, yes, read the 10Ks, read all that stuff when you get to that point. But first, you need to fix the beginning part of that engine, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you need to know all that. It's a matter of when you bring that in, right? When do you prioritize? So in the digital selling world, this is where I go back to this, which is what you're doing is you're putting assets out in the market, you're putting thoughts, ideas, content, whatever you want to call it, out in the market. And what we're trying to optimize for is feedback. And there's never been a quicker time for feedback on what do people want to hear from you or your company, right? And the companies doing digital selling well are making that feedback loop super tight. As David mentioned, we're compressing time even faster and faster and faster. So how do I put something, and there's never been a better time to do this, because guess what? You can put something out in content-wise on LinkedIn, just because that's what I know, and get at least 100 views on it. Your emails, how many views do you get? Maybe one, if you're lucky, if they open it, right? So copywriting is sales at scale, right? So as you put out that content, that stuff, you're hearing from your market. If you're looking at the data, right? What's working, what's not, and again, it's mastering that feedback loop on the digital selling side to understand how do I capture these people's attention.
Yeah.
And so those that master that, I think, are going to be the ones that win long term in this digital selling world.
Yeah. No, I love that, Andrew. I totally agree. And we just got a question here from the audience that kind of loops back to that exact kind of point. And it's along the lines of, what do you think are the best outreach channels other than phone and email? I know you're mentioning LinkedIn and so on. Like, have you had what kind of experience have you had, or success experience from social selling or direct mail or anything like that? Is there, outside of the phone and email, are there any other channels that have really worked for you?
Personal brand, right?
Yeah.
I think companies need to leverage the personal brand of their employees, right? Like, look at B2C. Okay, you look at B2C. What's huge in B2C? Influencer marketing, leveraging people to sell the product, right? And it's a tens of billions dollar industry, whatever, a lot. Now, with that, what you see in B2C, I have this theory that it will always make it to B2B. Those same tactics, right? B2B is just a little slower to catch up to this stuff. But what we're going to start seeing, and we're already seeing it with Outreach, Sam Nelson, blue-haired kid on LinkedIn, you see it, right? Like, brands are going to start leveraging influencer marketing by B2B brands, I should say, by leveraging their employees' personal brands. Because as the old saying goes, like, people buy from people, it's super true, right? So, I would say, and I forget what the initial question was, because I went on a tangent there. But yeah, absolutely. I think personal brands is the one thing to leverage. Now, what does that mean? Personal brand, that could be on Twitter, if that's where your ideal audience is. That could be on TikTok if you're in recruiting. TikTok's amazing, right? If you're a headhunter. Right, LinkedIn for me, because I sell to B2B SaaS. That's my niche. That's all LinkedIn, right? It's a gold line for me. So wherever your customers are, your employees and your people, your salespeople especially, should be building their brands there. Brands are and companies are starting to catch on to this, right? And so that's why I started Brand 30, right? Which is a little community of people that, 800 now, that are getting together and learning to build their personal brands. And, within a few days, you'll see, hey, I did a few, every day it's one post per day for 30 days is basically the premise. And in a matter of a week, you'll see people getting closing revenue, getting speaking engagements. And all it takes is to really put yourself out there a bit. So that to me is the digital selling aspect of this. And I think brands could win if they were to leverage that. It's been seen as a threat previously, right? Oh, my employee's putting it out there. But and we're still in the old world, right? And we need to shift to that new world, which is people's personal brand is no longer a threat to my organization. It's actually helpful, right? I can't tell you the number of times Manny, my CEO, has hit me up and said, "Hey, I was talking to this random person and they said they loved your content on LinkedIn and they brought you up." This is a CEO of outreach, right? And the people are just because they're seeing the content. So great, I look good to Manny, but it's also the fact that what's more important is that people are giving me attention, right? For lack of a better term, right? They're looking at what I have to say. And that's just the power of really that personal brand. So, yeah, that's if you're looking at your outbound process, besides emailing and calling, the biggest thing is how do you leverage your reps to build their personal brands and where they put out content and leverage who they are.
Yeah, I'd agree, Andrew. I think that the common denominator of one is just so powerful. I think we've got the technology in many ways to actually scale that, which is kind of exciting. I think, like Mikey, your question was kind of, how is this virtual world a threat? And I think it can be, but I think to Andrew's point, which I think is very true, it's an opportunity if you can kind of embrace it, kind of get to that power of one, which could be fantastic. And I know there's been a lot of questions around personalization. I don't think if anything, the element of personalization has exponentially gone up. We just need to do it better and interpret some of those business signals that, Andrew was thinking about. And I think there's an element of creativity. You mentioned, LinkedIn. One of the areas I've seen work really well is job postings. You want to understand what's the focus of the company from a growth perspective. What are their current job postings? If you've got a contact you're selling into, is he or she posting those jobs in that department? I think that more specific contextual insight about the customer or what they care about, as opposed to, and I think there was a comment around kind of the public 10Ks and 10Qs. Absolutely, you should be familiar with that stuff before you engage as a baseline. But I think where you differentiate yourself are these other business signals where you've got social, chat engagement, which to me gets really exciting.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. That's fantastic. And to go off of what you were mentioning on the personalization side there, David, we got a question here. Do you think ABM personalization is still alive and well for top of funnel outbound efforts?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, you probably have a point of view too on this. To me, I mean, I don't know if we all do it great, to be honest. I think we are at the infancy stage of really executing account-based marketing, or as I like to refer to often, account-based selling. Because I don't think it's a marketing responsibility. I've seen it work well where the marketing team and the sellers are really intertwined with the experience, and that's where the rubber hits the road. But again, it gets to that kind of power of one that your customers don't care which department or what product you're selling. We're all in the business, or we need to be in the business more of selling outcomes. And I think in order to sell outcomes specific to a customer, understanding that specific account, or even better, that individual in the account, is kind of that game changer.
Yeah. And I would say, Mark, to answer your question, short answer is yes. I could talk to you for an hour about this, but short answer is yes. And then what I'll add to that is ABM personalization is still around and well for top of funnel. What's happening is that's only one tool in your toolbox, in your toolkit, right? Now with this digital world, we can't rely on that one channel ABM personalization, whether that's marketing, whether that's sales, right? What we need to do is mix up those different channels, because guess what's happening? Emails becoming saturated. Everyone's trying to send emails now. So there's lots of noise, right? So the beauty now is thinking about, okay, we have ABM, we have reps building their personal brand, we have reps using sales automation, whatever it is, right? Going back to what I said earlier is, how do you make noise with those channels, whatever it is, and then listen for signal? Because once you get signal is when you can then decide, is this working for me or is it not? Going back to that feedback flywheel, whatever you want to call it, that I was talking about. Once you can determine that signal and then act upon that signal, that's going to get that flywheel going and allow your team to make better decisions. okay, this worked for us. We should double down on this. People like this, type of content when we talk about Freshworks, right? Outreach. We know, personal brand is huge right now, right? Let's talk about that and how to incorporate that in your emails going out, right? So again, it's taking that signal, whatever method you're using, ABM personalization at whatever stage, let's say top of funnel, and saying, how do I get that signal back and act upon it?
Yeah. No, awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's all. That's great stuff there, Andrew. Okay, I got another one here for you guys from, again, I know Andrew did it earlier, Duane. I hope that's how we pronounce your name. But what AI are you using to gather the data to choose the best prospects to target the early stage digital selling / marketing to those prospects? David, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and this buzzword of AI, and machine learning is nothing new. I think we've been talking about it for a decade. I think what's changed is the expectation that it actually works and can be utilized very quickly. And I think, from my perspective, we basically have tried to build in my company something that's just easy to use, and whatever tool you use, I think the key is to look at it in two ways. If we're thinking about AI for sales, one is the model. I think the AI model is goodness. It needs to be solid, but I would also argue that the training data is even more important if you think about AI. So for those folks who are evaluating a tool, or how can I better scale my sales team and keep track of things, I would emphasize that the AI model is becoming commoditized in the market today, to be honest with you. The value is that, how do I capture the tacit knowledge of the sales teams? The folks on this call, you guys are the secret sauce. So how do I take a seller that's got 15 years experience in the field? He or she is that top 20% of the sales organization that's driving 80% of my revenue. How do I scale that tacit knowledge in an efficient way? And AI, if done right with that training data, again, an AI tool is inherently dumb, right? It's just like a dumb robot. It doesn't know anything. You got to feed it and train it. And if you can capture, that's one thing we've been trying to focus on, that training data from the seller's perspective, it's just amazing. If I could interview each one of the sales guys on the call today and say, do you think this deal is a high likelihood to close or a low likelihood? You won't really know why, but your response could be instrumental in training your AI model to make a better decision for those more green reps, if you will, down the road.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And to follow on that, David, do you have any key indicators that your team at Freshworks look into to really get a better understanding of, is this deal going to close, or how fast is this deal going to close?
Yeah, I mean, to Andrew's point, right? The key is, how do you capture all these signals, and that's where it gets critical. And if you can think about beyond just when you start to engage the customer, but from the get-go, every touch point with your website, any own media asset, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever the engagement profile is, capturing those business signals and aggregating it can really train the AI model in an efficient way. The other thing I would mention that we've seen work really well is around a kind of product-led growth. So depending on if you're selling a technology product, if you're able to capture how your customer is using your product or service, that can be absolutely critical. So for us, we sell software as a service, understanding which features the customer is utilizing. Did they sign up for a free trial? Have they attended a sales hacker webinar? These are all kind of key signals for us. And what we've seen is, a lot of times, is it uncovers some of these uncomfortable truths. Frankly, a lot of things we thought was going to help drive pipeline and conversion, we were wrong. Now, we've seen data that says, hey, if this specific partner is working on this deal in the UK during the months of June, July, and August, there's a much higher likelihood of close, right? So those are the types of things we can't really do in a spreadsheet. And I think that's where you start to uncover those opportunities and also uncomfortable truths where you need to maybe pivot to kind of drive better sales behavior.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. I love that. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, coming from a engineer turned salesperson, I have lots of thoughts on it. The first thought that I'll say on that is, you know, AI is this big bubble. I won't get too philosophical about this, but long story short, some of the easy AI components here are becoming table stakes, and you can no longer use it as a differentiator because once everyone starts to have it, it's no longer a differentiator. So I think in the digital selling world, you know, that's one signal that I've learned within the past 6 months, right? So your competitive strategy should not rely on having AI, right? Now, how do you, the magic, so if there is a magic bullet to this AI component, the magic bullet is in how do I take the signals that this AI is generating for me and act upon it, just as I described earlier. So let me give you an example. Reply rates, right? You have all your sales reps sending emails through outreach, and 6 years ago when we built outreach, it was, hey, I got a 30% reply rate. Great. Well, what the market started to want recently in the past year or two is, okay, reply rates are great, but if I have a 30% reply rate and 29% of those are replies that were like, hey, unsubscribe me, and they're bad, then that's not good, right? So then when you look at the reply rate, it no longer has a positive sentiment around it, right? So what we decided to do is say, okay, for all of those emails that you're sending out and all that noise you're creating, how do I get signal back? And that signal back was, are these replies, how many of those 30% of replies are positive? How many are neutral? And how many are negative, right? And so what we just did there is leverage the ability to act upon the signals that you're getting. Okay, you're getting objections. Why are you getting objections? Oh, because you put your price in your email and it seems too expensive off the bat, right? You can start to notice trends. You can start to coach around it. You can start to look at these signals. And again, this is just super easy, right? Positive, neutral, negative. We're just classifying things, which is a pretty standard AI thing right now. But in that, the importance is not just having AI, but as David mentioned earlier, what is the outcome of having that AI, right? What can you act upon by implementing that, buying it, whatever you're doing?
Yeah, I totally agree, Andrew. I think that's the killer combo. It needs to be part of the offering of your vendor. You need to have some type of strategy, but it shouldn't be you go ahead and build it strategy. I would just emphasize that. I think we're at a maturity curve where AI should not be where you need 10 data scientists who are in the background crunching numbers. It needs, to me, the question is, can I use it today? When I sign into my application, is it something that I can use today or at least within the next couple days? It shouldn't be 6 months before you can get any value. And if you're not getting value out of it, then I think that could be a red flag for you.
Mm-hmm. David, are there any specific tools or processes that you use on your team to maximize that process?
In terms of AI,
yeah,
I think for us, we kind of look at it from soup to nuts. It's not just about, hey, let's analyze the pipeline and let's figure out, well, this deal's been sitting, hasn't been touched in 6 weeks, but maybe there's an opportunity to kick over the tires. I think it's, to Andrew's point, kind of from soup to nuts, initial engagement with the customer, how many touch points have they had with your brand? And I think from a sales manager perspective, one thing we're really focusing on is kind of managing that sales hierarchy or behavior of the sales team. What are some of the signals as a sales manager that can help you better manage your sales teams in terms of sales behavior? We talk about the customer's behavior, the prospect's behavior. The flip side is also there's an opportunity to help optimize the sales teams. All of us are working remotely and digitally. It's hard to have those get-togethers to really get the pulse of your own sales team. So I've seen that to be a challenge with sales managers as well. So I would also emphasize from a AI perspective, there's an opportunity to help streamline your day-to-day on, hey, where are some red flags that maybe you should flag. So when you have your QBR with your sales team, you can go ahead and say, hey guys, I've already identified some pain points. Let's get to it, rather than walking around the table and say, hey guys, what's going on? That proactively knowing opportunity, I think, is something we should look at as a best practice.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Love that. Awesome. Well, so I'm going to go back to the personal branding aspect. And Andrew, I'll start with you on this one. But we got a question from Mark, and he's asking for any advice on personal branding. So, like, are you saying for LinkedIn, each employee, sales, marketing rep has the same corporate branded profile, background pic, and tagline, or should it be individualized? What do you think on that?
Individualized 100% without a doubt. People, once again, as cliche as this is, buy from people, right? So there can be similarities, right, around the problems that those sales reps solve or those people online solve, right? Like the value they provide. There's definitely going to be similarities. I help with go-to-market motions of B2B SaaS companies, right? I deconstruct that. And a lot of people, all of my sellers, right, over at Outreach do the same thing. And so in that, they may word it differently, but yeah, it should all be around what they're selling, right? My advice on personal branding, first, is join Brand 30, obviously. But in all seriousness, if there is a magic bullet, what it is consistency. That, as simple as that is, it sounds, that's the hardest thing to do, right? It's the consistency, right? It's going on there and just showing up every day. And that's all those folks that have tens of thousands of followers that capture attention, right? It's not about the likes. It's about the attention that you can grab. Yeah. And if you have people's attention, you can sell your product. That's the secret. So there's people that can have a massive audience in attention spans of tens of thousands of people. They're not smarter than anyone here. They just show up every single day, and they have been. You go look, they've never missed a post in the past 2 years, right? And they find their niche as they are consistent. It's like diving in the deep end, and you learn how to swim from there, right? You start to figure it out. You start to notice trends. You start to actively look at like what works here, what doesn't. And I know we're on this personal branding tangent, but I think if we look at the digital selling umbrella, this is a big part of it. Yeah. Right. It's not everything for it, but like, again, I think it's that top of funnel piece that companies needed to start thinking about very seriously. Go ahead, David. You were going to say something?
No, I mean, the LinkedIn, I think, is a great example. And I would say I've made this mistake. Folks on my team have kind of made the mistake of utilizing LinkedIn as like a way to just amplify your company's posts. And I would say that's just the wrong approach. I totally agree with you, Andrew. When I think about the social media, it's a way to develop your personal brand, and I think that's just key. I think the rule of thumb I try to do, and I admit I don't follow my own rules sometimes. It's kind of a 50-50. I obviously want to be a good corporate citizen and amplify my company brand. We've got announcements, of course, but I think the other is you need to spend at least 50, probably more, of your time on social. LinkedIn is a great example on developing and amplifying your own personal engagement with your network, growing your network, joining different groups. I started to engage with Clubhouse recently, and I think that's another opportunity for folks, it's an opportunity for you to learn and to connect how your personal brand delivers value to your potential prospects. And I think that emphasis on value-based selling as opposed to features is just more important than ever. And I recently reread, I haven't thought about this book since college or since I got my MBA, was Dale Carnegie's book. You guys have I'm sure you're familiar with it, both Mikey and Andrew, that book on how to win friends and influence people. It's from the 1930s, I think it is. It is an old book, but it's amazing to me how incredibly relevant it is, even in today's digital first economy, in terms of it just making it about your customer, understanding who they are, and engaging on a personal level. First and foremost, everyone's favorite topic is themselves. And I think that has not changed in today's digital world. So if you haven't read that book, or if you haven't dusted it off in a while, go ahead and do it. It's a quick read. I would say I had some aha moments again. I took lots of notes. Just a suggestion there.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add there is one of the biggest questions I get, or number one questions I get from a lot of people as well. LinkedIn's a professional network. How should I post? Like, I should only post business stuff. Totally don't think about it like that. Like what David just said is what I call what I like to say is when people log into LinkedIn, they don't become like corporate aliens, right? When they're logged in for 5 minutes, like people haven't changed in thousands of years. Why are they going to change for 5 minutes when they log on to LinkedIn? You're still dealing with people, right? So it's just a different medium. Maybe the topics you discuss are different, but it's still you. You don't need to, be so formal. And honestly, it's easier to stand out on LinkedIn right now because if you're even semi-controversial, it'll stand out, right? Because so many people have this preconceived notion that, oh, I can only post business stuff that's for everyone. But if you're writing stuff for everyone, you're writing stuff for no one. And so people don't like indifference, right? It's taking a stance. It's polarization, this or that, right? Now we're getting into the nitty gritty of this, so I hope that's helpful. But at a high level, that's how to treat it, right? And again, relating this back to digital selling, people have what they look at your post and they decide in milliseconds whether they want to move on or not. They say, is this for me or is this not for me? It's pretty binary. So if you're not taking a stance and playing in the middle, not good. Because people, if you can't make the decision, other people can't either. And they say, bye, I'm going back to TikTok where I can watch like 3 hours of funny videos, right? So we're all competing with TikTok in this attention economy. And they've gotten so good at it, right? And so if you want to see how the future of social digital selling, go on TikTok and actively watch these videos, not passively and just scroll through. Actively watch those that get millions of views and see why they've worked, right? If we look at digital selling, the number of followers you have is going to become obsolete in the next 10 years, right? What the algorithms are starting to do is they're going to start feeding people valuable content based on what they've previously watched. So the number of followers, you can see Instagram kind of already doing this, right? You can't see how many people like the photo, right? It's going there, right? And TikTok's kind of mastered that as well, right? Where they're showing you things that are relevant to you. So that number of followers is not going to be as relevant in the future. It's going to be, are you producing something of value and that can be fed to these other people over here that need it? And then the social platforms will become the bridge for them. And so again, thinking about digital selling, social selling strategy, back to one thing, which is providing value. I know it's cliche, but like, is it useful for someone else? And I think that's, another one of the magic bullets if there was one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, just like what you mentioned there, Andrew, about like individualizing your content or whatever you put out on those social platforms. One, it's, gives your prospects and the people that follow you kind of an insight on who you are, what you're all about, so they can actually start to get to know you more and build that relationship, ultimately helping with selling in the digital world once you actually get them onto the phone, right? So I totally agree there, and I love that idea there. Wicked, great. This is awesome, guys. I really appreciate all this information and knowledge and stuff like that. I can't wait to utilize some of this in my day-to-day. But to continue the conversation here, I want to understand both, how David, your teams, and Andrew, how you've done this in the past. Is how have you been able to turn, I guess you'd say, the way you're selling to a potential client or a prospect, and turn that into almost a bigger differentiator into actually what you're selling? Have you been able to kind of, do that in your day-to-day, or David, your teams, have you seen that within your teams, how they kind of alter the way they're actually selling to add more value into, also obviously bringing the value from what they are selling, but by selling it in a certain way, adding that much more value? Have you been able to see that with your teams there, David?
Yeah, it's like it's a cool question, right? Because I think it's what are some of those business signals internally that we
Mhm.
can kind of interpret. Um, so one of the ways that we've been doing it, and I think it has borne some fruit. I'll describe it in the context of doing kind of a win-loss analysis. What are the deals that we're converting? What are the deals that we're not converting? And I found the deals that we're not converting, we're logging into our CRM and we're saying it's a closed loss opportunity. Well, what does that mean? Was it a product gap? Did we not do enough discovery where there was actually budget assigned, for example? What we have seen, I think what's common in the last 15 years that I've seen, usually it's a business reason as opposed to a product reason in terms of why the deal is lost.
Mhm.
Right. So there's this majority of just, hey, why was it was a bit, what is that business reason? The number one, I think, is usually, I don't know, Andrew, what you have seen, usually there's no budget or the budget or the project got pushed back, whatever that is. One of the areas that we've seen is, particularly in this world of digital, is, and when you're doing the loss analysis, it's important to do it one-on-one with the customer. Typically, and I would say to do it right, not have the sales team directly involved, because then you get more honest information from your potential prospect. And that insight is so critical. You don't need to do 100 interviews. I have found if I call 5 customers that we lost to, let's say 10, I would say half of those are like, hey, I had a challenge engaging your brand, or I'm an existing customer and you guys didn't treat me differently than a new customer. What is the buying experience? How quickly did you engage that brand? One of our biggest opportunities we have found is customers that engage our website via chat. The faster we can get them in touch with the appropriate seller and route that lead, it dramatically increases our likelihood to close that deal. Right. So there's some opportunities there. And then if we don't do a good job on that I would say that sales execution approach that we take with a customer, we've lost out. And those are easy opportunities if you can figure out what's wrong to quickly tweak. It's a low cost fix, but a high impact on the outcome.
Mhm. Totally. I love that. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. How it relates to sales. So if you look at it today, sales in the digital world, I look at it like a little bit like politics, right? You go to a state, you go to a city, you spread your message. You go to a different state, you go to a different city, you spread your message. You go to a different state. You repeat that over and over and over and over again. And every time it's the same message. So the way I look at it in a digital world is, how do you make that happen digitally? How do you leverage a champion or someone in an organization and then spread that message to these other folks? Sometimes it's getting on calls, sometimes it's cold emailing, sometimes it's adding them on LinkedIn and posting every day so they start to know who you are and actually become a fan of you, right? Again, another reason why we should all be posting content every day. Um, so that's how I look at it, right? And what we have to figure out is, how do we spread that message in the same message so everyone's on the same page to these different stakeholders? Now, why is that important? As y'all know, in every enterprise deal, at least, because that's what I know, there's at least 10 people involved, right?
Mhm.
And one person in that whole funnel of 10 people can make that deal not happen, right?
Yeah.
And so you're trying to imagine them as all states. You're trying to get every state to vote for you and your product, right? And so it comes back to spreading a message digitally. How do you do that? Copywriting, capturing people's attention.
Mhm.
It all goes back to that, right? That every person that you need that's going to help the sales happen. More of the sales is happening when you're not in the room than when you are, right? Or when you're not on the Zoom more than when you are on the Zoom, right? They're having conversations when you're not even around. So
Mhm.
your job is to figure out how to capture people's attention and and then give them the information they need to make a consensus. Uh, um, and this is super high level right now, tactics wise. We can get way more into that later on, but that's really at a high level how to do that. Again, it all comes back to attention, because if you
Yep.
can't do that, then you can't do anything else.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Andrew. That was great. Um, awesome. Well, So we got a few more minutes left here, guys. I got a couple of questions from the audience that I want to run by you guys before we part ways. But context-driven sales, what does that mean to you guys? David, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly relevant to the conversation of digital, and I think it's from the initial conversation. It's understanding and having I hate to use the word again, a contextual conversation with your customer each time based on where they're at in the sales cycle. And it's hard to do that because there's so many signals being thrown at us, and you're engaging with your customer across so many different digital channels. But if we can do it really well, contextually, meaning if I'm trying to sell you, Mikey, something, I need to understand which white paper did you download, when did you do it, have you engaged with a partner of ours, and why? What was the outcome of that? And the nice thing is, in the world of digital, you're leaving a digital footprint, which means if I take the time to understand where you've been and how you got there, I've got a much greater chance to having a more contextual conversation with you, a more meaningful conversation. That's all it is. I can't have a meaningful conversation with you if I don't have a context of what's important to you. It's not about product features. It's not about me. It's about what's important to Mikey. What's the problem that you're trying to solve right now? And how quickly can I build the trust with you that I'm the right guy to help solve that problem? It's a partnership opportunity, and that's where the context comes into play.
Yeah, and I totally agree, right? Because then you're giving the information that they want to hear, rather than hitting them with a bunch of other stuff that is not relevant whatsoever, right? So I love that thought there. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Honestly, this is the first time I've heard that term. Context-based. What was it? Context-based sales. Context-based something.
Sorry. Context-driven sales.
Context. That's the first time I've heard that buzz term. So my thoughts, I don't know because I haven't heard of it. But So yeah. What David said, I'm sure, is super accurate, right? Other than that, yeah, again, it goes back to relevancy, context, relevancy, whatever you want to say, feeding people what it is they want, just like what the algorithms are doing on your favorite, social media app, which is, again, B2C, they move a lot faster than B2B, right? They're figuring that out. And how do we get that relevancy in this context better in the B2B world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, Andrew. I'm going to give you an example, right? I'm out in the field on a sales call to an existing customer, and they're really upset because there's a huge support issue with the customer. And I'm going in there blind, not knowing that. What kind of reaction am I going to get the customer when I'm going in to upsell them? I don't have any context of what's going on with the account. So whether we call it customer 360 or contact, whatever to me, the whole key is just the customer's expectation in today has raised the bar so much higher on the fact that you understand them, and they don't care whether you're a support guy or a sales guy or you're part of the implementation team, whatever it is. There's very little patience from the customer side. I think if you could differentiate yourself and kind of have that lens going in, regardless of where the touch point is with the customer, that's a differentiator for you personally and for your company overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. Have you guys seen any, success, or is there any kind of pieces of content that you use internally, when speaking to prospects, whether that's a white paper, whether that's a report or survey? Are there anything that you've seen in terms of content that has really helped drive deals and help them close faster within your organizations? Or is that not really a main driver for your teams, and Andrew, for yourself? Andrew, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, so it depends on what part of the process. The short answer is yes, it helps me in every stage, right? Content, absolutely. The type of content, it really depends, right? And again, because content is most important for this top of funnel piece, as we've mentioned, the types of content that resonate are at a high level content that solves problems that your customers are having. Too often I see like, sales professionals on LinkedIn talk about sales stuff, but it's like, you're not selling to salespeople, you're selling to doctors. So talk about that problem that you're solving that your doctors are having. They don't want to see you talking about sales, right? So it's matching what people are trying to solve with the knowledge that you have on how to solve that problem, right? So I think the biggest mistake I see is, as David mentioned, not meeting people where they're at, right? Hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to build my personal brand, but I'm going to build it around, how to do sales because I'm a salesperson, but, and that's fine. You could do some stuff like that. But if you try to think about your outcome, if your outcome is trying to make more sales, then, I'm not going to try and sell a Ferrari to someone trying to buy a minivan, right? So you have to make sure that like what you're feeding and like how you approach it is aligning with what your outcome is. If your outcome is to get if you're medical sales and your outcome is to get a job at a B2B tech company that sells to salespeople like outreach, then sure, start posting that type of content, right? So again, it's really dependent on that like situational awareness, such as Mark is saying, right? Understanding like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm trying to solve this problem for these people. Here's ways to approach it with content.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Andrew. I agree. I would also err on the side of brevity. Keep it short. Keep it brief, man. I think today's world of white noise, it's got to be simple. If you can't communicate it in under 30 seconds, you should kind of rethink. And I would also say, in the world of COVID, at least what I've seen is phone calls have been hard because a lot of us are working from home. That means you got to call someone's mobile device. That's a bit tricky. And so, kind of to Andrew's point, this world of the attention economy and copywriting kind of blend together. I think that's something to consider. But you got to keep it brief, and I would say keep it video based if possible. I mean, none of us will. How many of you like to read? Right? I'd probably say not very many of you are going to read much more than a short paragraph. So something to consider is what do you find engaging, before you think about outreaching to your customer.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. That's fantastic. So we got a few more minutes here. I'm going to loop in one more question here. We got a question from Mark in the chat here, and he would just like to hear a couple comments from you guys on video content, in emails, websites, social nets, etc. Thought leadership videos or even short video demo videos. What are your thoughts on that? David, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, from my last comment, I'm a big fan of multimedia video content. I think it stands out and people appreciate it. It's got to be optimized for mobile. I think I forget the last stat I saw, but basically, if it's not mobile friendly, it's not going to do you much good. Most people are engaging content on their mobile device, so make sure it's super friendly in that regards. Keep it short. I think that's also a key component. And I think based on where they're at in the sales cycle, you can have some different conversations. One of the things that works really well for our BDRs is really short, I call them demo vignettes for a little later stage sales cycle. Start exposing them to the value of your product, whatever it is, but in bite-sized pieces. Don't just send them an email and, look at different ways to engage them, not just one avenue. So that would be one recommendation I'd have.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great question, Mark. I'm actually trying to get better at video myself. So I would say super important. You look at all the platforms today, they're starting to actually prioritize video, right? Because they see it as the future. TikTok helped with that wave. But, 100% like video is still not even on first base, right? So if you can get good at that, great. The benefit, if you think about how people use video, they're not always watching the video, right? They can watch, but they can have it on their phone as they walk too, right? Yeah. So that's the benefit of video, especially if it's educational, long form type content as well. So yeah, that yes is the short answer there. On thought leadership, on demos, on whatever you got to do to portray your message. So my goal in October actually is to do all my posts in video format. And again, one thing to mention here, Mark, is that video that you're gonna put out there starts with copywriting, right? What you're gonna say, how you're gonna format it. Again, so for sellers, for marketers, for anyone that's putting content out there, that's why copywriting is important, because once getting video, it's the basis for it, right? So yeah, one there.
Yeah, and I just responded in the text to, I think the key is also get the audio right, guys. The video quality, don't stress about it. Don't worry about, bells and whistles. Get your audio clear and concise. People will turn it off or not listen if the audio is not clear. That's much more important than the audio. And frankly, it's more credible. And, the more less bells and whistles you have, the more real it is, the more it's about you as a personal brand. Don't worry about having a corporate branding, make it perfect. The key is to make it authentic and to make sure they can understand you.
Awesome. Fantastic, gentlemen. Well, we're at time here, so thank you both so much for blessing us with your knowledge. I've learned so much. I can't wait to throw that into my day-to-day right after this. So again, thank you both so much for being here today. I know it's an hour of your time. You guys are both very busy people, so thanks for being here, blessing us with your knowledge and expertise on this digital selling world. So again, thank you, everybody. I want to thank Freshworks for sponsoring this webinar today. Go check them out. They're doing some incredible stuff and growing rapidly. So you're going to want to know about them. And if you have any additional questions for David or Andrew, please go find them on LinkedIn, follow them, engage with them. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But on that note, I'll let everybody go. Enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thank you both, Andrew and David, for being here. Really appreciate it and looking forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks, Mikey. Good selling, everybody.